This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week's episode is brought to you by NEMCA, that's sponsoring the Yankee Gathering in Nashua, New Hampshire, coming up November 7th through the 9th. And you can find out more information by going to their website at nemca.com and registering today. It promises to be just a really great convention. If you are a historian or a collector, it sounds like they're going to be having a lot of great speakers and 18 dealers, just a bunch of stuff happening. We'll talk about it a little bit more partway into this podcast. Well, this week's podcast does feature David Williamson. He is well known in the magic community, and every 50 episodes I like to have some sort of a special guest. And so that's why I've held this for a while. I actually had spoken with David earlier this year at the Magi Fest, and then I happened to see him again at Abbott's Get Together a couple of weeks ago, and then at Magic Live this past week. So I've just run into him a couple of different times, but this was something that had been recorded earlier, and I said, hey, I'm going to hold this because I think it's something special people really enjoy and have it as one of the 50 milestones. For a few of you who might have OCD, you might notice that this number 850 is kind of out of sequence. That's because, again, I want to keep something special on the 50s when you're going back and researching in the archives. But I had 849 as days 1 and 2 from the Magic Live convention, and then 851 as day 2, or day 3, and then day 4 is 852. It's kind of confusing, but we're getting back on track here, going backwards into 850 to have David on this particular episode. But then we'll catch up then at 853, then the following week, the next week. Hope you understand. One of the things that David talks about this week is his role in the Illusionists and other tours he's been on, as well as about his new community called Sleight School. And he offers a special discount, that is the first month free, for his Sleight School. If you go to sleight.school and put in the code FEST, that's all capital letters, F-E-S-T, then you'll get your first month free. I think he said it only costs about $12 a month anyhow, but you get your first month just to kind of see if you like it and test it out for free, just using that code FEST, all capital letters. Well, again, he's got a lot to say here this week, and I think you will enjoy our conversation. So please welcome my guest, Mr. David Williamson, here on The Magic Word. My guest today is somebody I have known for a while and has been well known in the magic community, and is someone who is a very funny performer and has performed around the world, from the Sydney Opera House to New York City, but resides in Ohio. And I've seen him perform several times, like as a one-man show or as part of a troupe of actors. He has also got out several books. Williamson Wonders is one of my favorite books. He's got a lie detector test that I've always loved that's in that book, and several other ideas that are really wonderful in that. And enough. He's been working with the Illusionists for a while, and then during COVID had to shut down for a while. In fact, I think when we had talked briefly, it was the last show with Illusionists before they had shut down for COVID. But nevertheless, here he is then right now, funny man, David Williamson.
David Williamson.
Man, it's good to see you.
How are you, Scott?
I'm fantastic. Nothing less than fantastic. You have done a lot, and I remember, when I was talking with you one time when you were in Houston, and you were with the Illusionists, and Jeff Hobson was going home. I think his daughter was getting married or something.
I think his son was graduating or something like that. Yeah.
And then you came into town, because I remember I was sitting in...
I'm Hobson Light. When Jeff's not available, he goes, call Williamson.
get Jeff's back up. His still in. Stunt man. And because I had a room full, I had Kevin James and Adam.
That's right.
Trent.
Jeff was actually there.
Yeah. And Jeff was there, and then I think you had come in because
day early to learn the show.
Yeah, and then that was just a very funny podcast that you and Jeff talking back and forth that we were we had an enjoyable time. But so then once Jeff got back, that I guess that was just kind of the weekend. Because I remember I lived just a couple of miles from downtown, and I picked you up and drove you back to the hotel. You know, remember picked you up at the stage door and everything over there. But then later you started on with the Illusionists in your own right, where you were the MC yourself.
Yeah, then they hired me. Jeff kind of retired at one point from the Illusionists, and I started picking up some of the dates, and I've been with them for 6 or 7 years now.
Okay.
Doing different tours. I just got back from the Middle East, and I'm going to go to California next week with them, and we're going to Washington D.C. And I really like that franchise. You know, it's just a big goofy magic show. Their marketing is better than the show, but the show's great too.
Disagree. It's a great show. It's a great show. Yeah, and one of the guys that I talked with during that time when we were in Houston the last time before COVID was the escape artist.
Andrew Basso.
No, not Andrew Basso. Oh. Sorry, the guy who did the one who was injured with...
Jonathan Goodwin.
Jonathan Goodwin, yes. And didn't you work with Jonathan then also?
Yeah.
I thought,
we did a tour together, a whole U.S. tour.
That's right.
And that's when COVID hit.
That's right.
And we had in Oklahoma City. Yeah,
right.
That was our last gig.
And I thought that was interesting, the way that you had kind of walked around the group and you were doing close-up magic, for the audience as everyone was being seated. It's like,
they don't ask me to do that. They can't stop me. It's true.
You love
I did the same
so
thing
much.
for Circus 1903. I did the same thing on the Disney Cruise Line. It's like you got all these people out there for half an hour picking their nose, and you got all these magicians backstage. I was like, I'm going to go out and goof with them, And I
really,
like, the other thing is I don't get a chance to do close-up too much anymore, formally or even informally. I don't have a restaurant gig, and I'm not doing as many kind of corporate hospitality suites as I used to. So I miss it. I miss doing card tricks for people. I miss pulling coins out of kids' ears and stuff like that. So I just go out and start goofing off. And it doesn't hurt when I hit the stage. I go, oh, that's that idiot who pulled the card out.
That has to be kind of funny. It's like, he was just here with me a moment ago. I just shook hands with that guy, because you don't introduce yourself as being...
No, I just walk up and start bothering people, get your feet off the furniture. And
Yeah, that's right. Do kind of like a goofy stuff that you would do like on stage with kids and whatnot.
Yeah, I have fun with them.
Yeah. Reminds me a little bit like of Cirque du Soleil, where they've got some different people that are kind of coming out in the audience before the show actually begins. The show begins before the show begins.
Sure.
Kind of a
But
thing.
it's not a formal part of the show. It's just I like doing it.
Yeah, because no one else had done that before. You started doing that, I guess. And so do you still do that then?
They can't stop me. Oh, yeah. I just got back from, I'm the ringmaster in a show called Circus 1903 by the same producers of the Illusionists. And we traveled all over the country with that show and all over the world.
And it was Charlie Fry also, wasn't he in that show?
Charlie Fry was in, you're thinking of the Illusionists 1903.
Okay.
They did this whole 1903 thing. It was Mark Kalin's original idea to do a throwback golden age of magic.
Okay.
It was called the Illusionists 1903, the golden age of magic. And everybody was in period costumes, and everything was set in the time period of 1903, and you did these classic. And Charlie Fry was the vaudevillian in that show. Perfect casting, hilarious. He did his juggling act, and they had Mark Kalin doing the sawing and so forth. But and then the producers, Simon Painter said, who had done a lot of Cirque shows, he goes, I'm making a new Cirque show. We're going to call that Circus 1903, We'll change your name to Illusionist Turn of the Century. And and we toured with Circus 1903 all over the world from 2016 on and played at the Paris and Las Vegas for 6 months and go to London every season for the holidays. We just got back from, like you said, the Sydney Opera House and Australia, a little tour over the holidays now. But anyway, that's the show I love, currently doing a lot of. And I do the same thing. I walk out amongst the crowd and just bother people. Well,
the fact that we're chatting here right now, I mean, you're kind of between shows. I'm surprised that you're not back to back to back to back, just like...
That show's a little spot. It's a big, expensive show, so it's not constantly on tour.
I see.
We have a Middle East tour in the summer, and then we'll go back to a holiday tour, and so that's a little spotty for that particular show.
I see.
And then in between, I do other things, like the Illusionists have some shows coming up that I'm going to do.
So you're going to get the best of both worlds.
I'm flying to Tahiti in a few days to go on a cruise ship, and all these things. So,
do you have grandkids by now? Surely you do.
No, I keep telling my daughter, who's only 25, I said, hurry up and get knocked up. We got a puppy in lieu of grandkids. We're waiting.
Yeah, that's why I was going to ask, because if you do have grandkids, it's going to be harder to travel because you kind of want to stay and play with them. Okay. Yeah, I'll take pictures with them. I mean, I can carry with the pictures. And so are you working some cruise ships then as well, or not?
I did 10 years on Disney Cruise Line before COVID.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And then I stopped doing cruise ships during COVID. And I
but
swore off of
sure.
them.
Okay.
But then my wife was like, I really miss going to Alaska and some of these ports. And I was like, okay. So I'm going to start up slowly doing a few.
Okay. Yeah. I think it'd be kind of difficult again because of the other Illusionist shows.
It's just scheduling.
Scheduling, sure. Yeah. Because a lot of times when you're out on a cruise, they want you to be out for several months at a time.
No, I just do a few days.
Do you?
I just do.
You fly in and out
a week or
off.
So. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're at a different.
I don't do long-term contracts.
You're at a different level and position, I guess, where you can command that kind of thing.
Well, no, some of the ships don't do that. For example, Disney doesn't do long-term.
Oh, they don't.
No, they just do week on, week off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With the Illusionists, then also, how long does it take them to load in and load out? I guess
Illusionists is really light on its feet. In fact, Cirque du Soleil bought the Illusionists, bought the company that created it, the production company. And after COVID, during COVID, Cirque du Soleil shut down all their properties in Vegas and all over the world.
Right.
But when things were coming back, the show that they could deploy the quickest was the Illusionists. All these other big Cirque shows take a lot of rigging and rehearsals and stuff. But the magicians all know their stuff. They bring their own props, and all you need is light and sound. And a few minimal sets, and boom, we have a show. So we can when we were touring it, we could go in same day and do the show that night.
Okay. And typically you are there for like a weekend at a time at some place?
Depending. Sometimes it's a week.
Do you? Say it a week?
Sometimes, like next week, I'm going to Sacramento. It's a one-nighter in a casino, which is very rare for the Illusionists. Yeah. It's a special one-off kind of one-nighter. Usually it's about a week or a long weekend.
How can they cover their nut unless they really charge a lot for the tickets?
Somebody's making a lot of money. I don't know. Maybe the casino has a special event or it's a buyout for the clients or something. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I don't know what the business deal is.
Since then, too. As I recall also that the thing that I've seen and heard a lot about, of course, is the elephant that you kind of
The elephant in the room, yeah.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
In Circus 1903, when I joined the Illusionists, Simon Painter said, I have an idea for a circus show, a decadent, over-the-top, turn-of-the-century circus show, and we're going to have elephants on stage. I go, what? He goes, they're going to be puppets, full-size elephant puppets. I go, you're crazy. Now, my daughter and I had seen Warhorse at the Kennedy Center, and we both moved to tears because we have horses and stuff. And it was amazing with these puppets. The puppeteers are in full view. They don't try to hide them. But these horses are so lifelike, and it's incredible. Well, the same people who did the horses for that show did our elephants, and they're just beautiful. They're works of art, but when they move, you believe it's a real elephant.
Are there two people
There's
per
three
elephant?
people.
Three people.
Inside, two of them on stilts, inside the big elephant. Now they go, how big are we going to make the big elephant?
Yeah.
They did the research, and they found out how big the largest African elephant ever to walk the earth was, and they made it that big. Really? So it's as big as the largest elephant known to man. That's how big that puppet is.
Wow.
And then there's a baby puppet that's operated by one person.
That's the cute one that you interact with.
Yeah. Peanut. And so it's great. And when these puppets come on during their scene, people are not prepared for the emotional reaction they have. We weren't. When we went to Melbourne, Australia to create this show in 2016, a bunch of circus artists, and they get all the top acts from around the world, people who've won competitions and so forth, these fantastic circus artists. And me, I was from the magic world. You had the people from the circus world. And then you had this team of British puppeteers with their puppets came in. So they had to find a way to mesh all of us together in one cohesive show. And when the puppeteer, we saw these big puppets over in the corner just standing there. I was like, that's incredible. I don't know what that's going to be like. But when they did their show and those elephants, their scene, and the elephants stepped through the mist with the music and everything and the lights, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. All these circus performers, many of whom were Ringling veterans who had worked alongside of elephants.
Real elephants, right?
Were moved to tears. It's beautiful.
Because it was so lifelike.
They're so lifelike, and it's just so.
How did they develop that?
Scene.
I mean, the guys who are the puppeteers themselves,
They went to the Melbourne Zoo. And they spent a lot of time with the elephant people and the elephant pens and with the elephants.
Elephant people.
Learning the breath and the way they walk and move, and they learn to emulate that. And they have their own. It's a very specific communication. All these puppeteers are experts at large scale puppetry, and they've all done walking with dinosaur shows and other kind of warhorse and all these large scale puppets. So they're specialists. I didn't know it was a thing, large-scale puppets where you actually go inside and inhibit the puppet. But they're very experienced, they're very good, and they're very serious about their art. And it's beautiful, and it translates into an incredible emotional scene on stage.
Yeah. And so you really didn't have any input at all other than that? I mean, or other than scripting some of it, I guess they asked you?
Mike Caveney and I actually wrote the script for Circus 1903, most of it. Now, there's a circus historian, he's the Mike Caveney of the circus world, named Chris Berry, who originally took a stab at the script, and we used a lot of his vernacular and ideas. And then Mike and I shaped the script. I'm the only one with a microphone in the whole show who speaks. I'm the MC, I'm the circus owner, and I become the ringmaster, you know. And so I have a lot of talking parts, and we do a spoof of a side show that's very funny. And we have a lot of gags and jokes in there that Mike and I wrote. But at this point, Mike's contribution is down to about 5%. It's changed so much, you know. And Mike got paid, and Chris Berry got paid as a writers. They got writing credit and money, and I don't get anything. And the show is 95% something I wrote at this point, but I don't complain because I love the show so much.
Is there a lot of it also that you will improvise?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not that much because, you know, it's a big show, a lot of moving parts. You have circus people waiting. You have riggers waiting for that cue.
So you have to hit the cue.
And you can't go off the script, and you've got to be there because they're waiting. They're powdering their hands or they're getting stretched.
Yeah.
And if you go 10 minutes long or 5 minutes long, you're putting somebody else at risk, really. You know?
Wow, hadn't thought about that then, too.
Yeah.
And how many people are actually in the...
Wow, it depends. The cast fluctuates. It's around 22, 23, 24.
That's a big cast.
And then with the crew, we're upwards of 35, almost 40 people traveling with the show sometimes.
And you travel by bus or just
It depends on where we are. Sometimes plane, sometimes truck and bus, sometimes, you know, sometimes we just sit down. Like we went to London for 4 years in a row and played the Festival Hall in South Bank Centre there. Beautiful venue. And... you know, we just live in a hotel and fly into London and do the show for the whole holiday season, you know.
Mm-hmm. I was just listening to a song recently, I think Jackson Browne, talking about going in and doing a show, and it's just like one city just blends into the other.
Yeah,
Do you kind of feel that way sometimes?
On tour, it did. They would, and it's not a joke, they would actually write the name of the city on the front of the stage. So when you're walking, say forward, hello, Chicago, hello, Des Moines, hello, Sioux City, hello, Dayton, you know.
Right.
Because after a while, you kind of forget where you are.
That's right. Do you find that some audiences are better than others?
Sometimes.
By country or by state or region?
Sometimes by country and sometimes by state and region. It depends.
Humor is different.
It's a weird chemistry. You can't really tell. But in England, they're a little more staid. Mm-hmm. They don't give it up as easily. You go to Texas, they give it up right away, you know, and different places. The smaller markets are more enthusiastic audiences because they usually don't go out a lot. They're not as jaded.
Yeah.
They're not
They're
show
just glad
weary.
To have you.
You know, they're just glad somebody came to Sioux City.
Yeah.
And they pack out the auditorium. I mean, it's amazing.
Wow. Has there been one particular place or city? I mentioned Sydney a couple times, the Opera House.
Opera House was always very
favorite?
special, and it's incredible. It's just the sound of the audience in there is so bright. You know, there's no dampening or anything. It's their concert hall.
The acoustics are great.
The acoustics are great, but also it's just an iconic building, and everybody's happy to be in there because it's a historic building, and just the mood and the energy is really up for the performers and the audience. So it's very special. Does
it look like there are going to be any other changes to this in the near future, or you kind of got like this as a proven model that we're going to stick with?
It's a big, heavy show, and Cirque du Soleil is like, we want to get it out there. We think more people deserve to see it, but it's so expensive. We can only go into certain venues, so we're trying to pare it down without sacrificing the thrills and the chills and the drama of the show. Mm-hmm. You know, for example, when we first started, we had high wire artists. First time in a proscenium setting. Wow. We had actual high, because those things require a lot of ballast. That high wire has to be taut. We had to have a special grid engineered with an innovative, pulley system, and it was very expensive and huge, only fit in certain theaters. We got away with that. Mm-hmm. We still have aerialists, but it's with just a single winch mounted on a standard truss. And that's half a truck saved right there.
Right.
And a lot of expense.
Right.
By changing the type of acts that we facilitate.
I was talking with speaking of Ringling, with one of the clowns some years ago, and they were talking about when they went from regular light bulbs to LED lights. Number one, they're lighter, they're more efficient, they're brighter, and most importantly, I guess that they have less energy and they last longer. I mean, a lot of advantages why that you would use that. So I can see why that you would use new technology, whether you're the latest in sound and light and whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. They are introducing a lot of new technology into the show, with microphones and speakers and lighting systems and so forth. Yeah. In fact, we had a new lighting designer for this last tour, and he brought less kit, but he had as much drama on the stage.
Wow. Do you prefer to use a handheld mic, or do you always use a...
No, I don't. I got to have both my hands empty. I'm doing lots of magic.
That's true.
Other guys have figured it out. Comedy club guys don't like the lapel mics or the headset mics. They figured out how to use a microphone and put it back at the stand and use both hands and so forth. But I never did comedy clubs. So that wasn't my thing. I did corporate. I was like, no, I just want it on my face. And
because I was talking with Ken Weber recently, and he was, of course, advocating how that you should be using that, because one advantage is that since you use a lot of volunteers, that you can actually put the mic in front of them, because if they have something to say or it's funny or you're asking a question, you want to hear what they say. When without them being mic'd and you're just using a mic, you can't hear them. Very true. Yeah.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah, there is kind of a trade-off. So you talked about the high-wire trapeze artists, et cetera, that you'd work with. Has there ever been some sort of a problem or a tragedy or somebody being injured?
Oh, yeah. We've had broken ankles and twisted shoulders and hurt backs. And
you're just talking about the volunteers that help you.
That?
You're talking about the volunteers who help you.
Yeah, the kids on stage with me. No. But so I always have to stand in the wings, ready to go if something happens, like in a real circus.
Oh, okay. So the ringmaster doesn't
send
just
in the clowns. It's like send in Williamson, because I'm ready with material if we have to cut an act or at the last minute, I have to put in a new act.
And that's happened.
It happens a lot. Yeah.
More often, and also that has to appear seamless, so it looks like that's part of the show.
Yeah, but sometimes it's okay, like Circus, to show them it's real. The danger's real for all these acts, even though it looks slick and rehearsed.
Sure,
things can happen. And that's why you're on the edge of your seat, because you understand that things can happen. So we don't try to cover up when something happens necessarily. It's like kind of part of the drama of going to the circus.
Yeah.
It's not a Broadway play. It's real athletes doing dangerous stunts.
I think a lot of the audience realizes that they think that there's really, you try to dramatize this and make it look like it's sort of going to be dangerous, but in reality, the back of their mind is like, well, they wouldn't be doing this if there was...
Right, until they see a guy fall and
exactly.
break his ankle.
Right, exactly.
Now, having said that, part of the circus arts are making something, it's like magic. You hide how easy it is to make it look more difficult or more magical or something. Same with circus. These guys, a tightrope walker during rehearsals, he's eating an apple and reading a John Grisham novel as he goes back and forth.
Yeah.
Not even
during
looking.
Rehearsal. Yeah.
Rehearsal. But then during the show, he's, whoa, almost teetering on the edge of falling off every step he takes.
Yeah.
That's the art. That's the circus arts. You got to ratchet up the drama. And every act in that first tour had a fake fall moment, like a fake mistake built in. So they have to stop the music, recompose themselves, and try one more time. And the applause was 10 times when they achieved the trick that time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And we were like, you all can't do this because it'll look like amateur hour. So we had to be very selective about who got to add this little phony element into their act. These phony mistakes. We were very judicious about it. Otherwise, it looked like everybody was either people catch on. I go, this is ridiculous,
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of like a juggler when they will drop something. It's like, that really is...
Well, Mike Caveney, I've had this argument for years. He does the coffee cup.
Yes.
And he prides himself in that thing. And he practices it. He has the hoop outside his door. When he comes home from the store, he throws it. And when he goes, before he gets to the car, he throws it again. He's always practicing this thing. But when he does rarely drop it, and he has to stop the music and do it again, it's a huge cheer.
I saw this at the SAM.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I go, Mike, you got to do that every night. He goes, no. Yeah,
Well,
like, you're not Circus. You're thinking like a magician.
But I do think that the audience thinks, well, I wouldn't be seeing this because like on America's Got Talent, when they're watching something that they wouldn't broadcast, somebody being injured or the arrow or the knife or hitting them or something, it's like, okay, we'll cut that out. We're not, but they make it look dangerous, leading up to the commercial as a arrow's coming towards them or whatever.
We had that happen in South Africa with the Illusionist, Holly England, who's now on the Masters of Magic
Masters
tour.
of Magic tour, right?
But she was a dancer and an assistant in the Illusionists for years, and a director and so forth. But she was assisting the archery guy, the crossbow act, and she was holding the balloon above her head, and he was shooting it over his shoulder, looking at his iPhone. That was a standard thing.
Yeah.
He hadn't notched it all the way. It was about a quarter inch out away from the notch, which changed the trajectory, and it hit her right in the middle of the forehead. His aim was true. It was dead center.
Yeah.
But it hit her right in the forehead. Didn't stick because it's not a sharp arrow, but still, it's got a metal tip on it, like a target arrow. And she fell down, crying. I mean, it really hurt her. And the gag I always did after his act, he would do his crossbow act, which was amazing. And then the spotlight would hit me standing down by the stage. And I'm looking up at the stage, and you just see the back of my head going, wasn't he great? And I turn around, and you see there's an arrow sticking out the other side of my head. I go, we call him Old Eagle Eye, And it was a huge laugh. Sure. I just loved doing it. Well, when Holly got hurt, they're going, Dave, get out there.
Yeah.
And I had the arrow in my hand. And I go,
not quite so funny.
I go, do I put it in my head or not? How do I play? I think I made the correct decision not to go out there with the arrow sticking out of my head. And but Holly was, she was. I go, folks, we're backstage. They're taking care of her. She's fine. Well, she wasn't fine. She was curled up in fetal position in pain. They took her to the hospital. A couple stitches. She was eventually fine. Yeah. But they got rid of that act that night. It's like, that's the last time
That was the last time that they did that?
They fired him from the Illusionists that night.
Really? You got to be 100% or you're out, obviously.
Yeah, we can't have that.
How do they...
It was like after Roy got bitten, they go, we've been letting live tigers on stage for all these years. What were we thinking? Same with this. We've been letting this guy shoot arrows.
There was a podcast, an Apple podcast called Wild Things that was like, I think, an 8 or 10 episode podcast that talked about Siegfried and Roy's career leading up to the tiger bite.
I didn't hear it, but I know about it.
It's worth going back and listening to. It's fascinating because they talk about that very thing. It's like, we weren't thinking about the fact that there are wild tigers who are roaming without a leash even, not being tied down to whatever, walking across the stage, walking out on the a catwalk with people on both sides that they can jump over onto your table at any time. But for years, we never thought about that because they never did anything.
Until they did.
Until they did, yeah. It's not until they do. And it's the same thing, I think, with a danger act like that, that people... Yeah. So do you think
going back to our friend Jonathan Goodwin, who was doing a danger act, and there was a mistake made, and
into
he's
his
now
career.
Paralyzed.
Yeah, paralyzed in a wheelchair. Yeah.
And to his credit, his attitude is incredible.
I haven't spoken with him since.
Yeah.
I was in Vegas some time ago, and I walked backstage where I think he was with, I forgot which hotel it was, and I saw his case for his crossbow, and they said, he hadn't been back since, and they haven't moved it or touched it. Waiting for somebody to come and get it. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's just kind of almost looking at someone's gravestone.
He was an amazing person without his... Even before, outside of the stunts he did, he was an amazing person. And he still is, obviously.
Exactly. When I spoke with him for an episode that he was talking about, when he was a kid and, he had like a hot iron that was on a thread or whatever, and he had his dad to do something while he was, tie him up when he was supposed to escape when he was like 13 or something, before his iron would land on him.
Oh, my God.
Different kinds of things that he's always been interested in that. So, that is kind of been sad in so many ways. But one thing is that you can't pursue a passion that you have any longer, that you've had a lifetime of doing and enjoying, that you can only sit back and think about ideas or look at other people or maybe look back at the career you had.
Well, he has new fields to conquer now,
Well, that's true. Yeah. That's true. We were going to take a quick break here to hear a word from our sponsor, the New England Magic Collectors Association. NEMCA, that's the New England Magic Collectors Association, the Yankee Gathering. It happens every 2 years, and it's happening this year. And it's not too far from now, and now's a good time to register for that. It's coming up on November the 7th through the 9th, and I've got with me right now the NEMCA Vice President, Mr. Mike Mayo. Hey there, Mike.
Nice to be here.
I'm glad that you are with us, and I want to hear more about what's going to be happening out in, and where's it going to be hosted? It's in
It's going to be in Nashua, New Hampshire, this November 7th through 9th. We're at a brand new venue. We're really excited. This year, we're going to be honoring Robert Olson as our guest of honor. And we have a couple new things added to the program this year. We're going to actually be taking a field trip to the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts. Good old Rich City. They're going to have a exhibit there on magic and its connection with spiritualism. That's going to be in conjunction with the book that's coming out. And we have quite a list of presenters that are going to be there this year as well.
What a perfect place there in Salem, where they've had the Salem witch trials. And I know that you're going to be having a little bit of time so people can kind of wander about the city and see some of the sights and the witch museum and different things like that while they're in town.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's going to be able to have lunch and walk around and see the sights in addition to the museum. And then back at the hotel, we have quite a list of presenters doing a Friday night symposium on African-American magicians. Rory Rennick, Brandon Hodd, Margaret Steele is going to be speaking there. And then we have also other presenters such as Mike Caveney, George Schwartz is going to be presenting, Jonathan Neal Brown, John Hodgson, Mike Rose, Bill Kalush. I believe this is the most speakers we've ever had at a Yankee gathering before.
Wow. And another thing you guys do is you put together a booklet, which is more than just a souvenir program.
Yes. We have the Yankee Magic Collector. It's a publication that comes out every 2 years. It's edited by one of our own, Andrew Pinard, and that features articles from all different presenters. And it's really grown to be quite a publication on magic history.
And that's gotten to be almost a collectible in itself.
Absolutely. I like to think so. That's for sure. And speaking of collectibles, this year we have 18 dealers. This is definitely the most you've ever had at a convention. 18 dealers, and even in the dealers room, we're going to have live wood turning demonstrations. So It's going to be quite fun.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a great time and a great convention. Again, the convention will be in Nashua, New Hampshire, and it's going to be November 7th, 8th, and 9th. And for people who want to register now, what's the website? Where should they go?
You can find us on Facebook at the New England Magic Collectors Association, or you could head on over to nemca.com for all the details of the conventions and to register.
It sounds like it's going to be just an awesome convention. And for people who haven't been, it's going to be another 2 years before you get the chance. So you need to register now so you don't miss this one. You'll be talking about it for the next 2 years. Be sure to check them out and to register today at nemca.com. Now back to David Williamson and this week's episode. And you were talking about how that you're not doing restaurants or anything anymore. Are you working on another book or something perhaps sometime?
No, I'm not really. I'll tell you, I pour all my creative energy now in the magic world into this community I started.
And I want to talk a lot about this.
Well, we can talk about that. During COVID, Bill Kalush had been calling me every year for the previous 7 years going, I want you to teach online at my online magic, Conjures Art Center, University, Conjuring Arts. And I said, I'm not a teacher. I lectured, used to lecture, but I'm not a teacher. I don't have students. I don't have pupils. I said, my idea of teaching magic is to hand somebody a copy of Amateur Magician's Handbook and say, call me in 20 years. Yeah. That's the best teacher to me.
Yeah.
Because
that's how you learned.
The layman will teach you more than I'll ever teach you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was my attitude. Mm-hmm. Not a good attitude, but... So I was always saying, no, and I travel too much, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, when COVID hit, he goes, Willie, I know you're sitting there in your underwear. You're not touring. You don't have an excuse. You're teaching this year. And I said, all right. And I loved it. I had 15 guys and my students for 5 weeks in this class. And we talked about everything from, routining to sleights and routines and how to sell a trick and the theory, magic theory, and everything in between. And I was going back to my books. I was doing research. I was creating blog posts for these guys and notes and videos. And it was like a teenager. I was a hobbyist again.
Mm-hmm.
And I
had a newfound passion.
Yes, absolutely. So I decided, and I felt like I was making progress, and everybody felt like it was worthwhile exercise and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was actually contributing some knowledge to these, guys, and I learned a lot. When you teach, you learn. Mm-hmm. And I was
you have to know more than the students.
I was learning so much, and it was such an exciting experience for 5 weeks. When it was over, I was like, I don't want this to end. So I hung up my shingle. I put the word out. I'm giving lessons now, online private lessons for, and we'll talk about anything you want to talk about in magic. I had beginners, not beginners, but amateur enthusiasts, sign up. I had people going on Penn and Teller who want to brush up on something going up. I had guys who were working on the Netflix special, and everything in between. But mostly it was guys who, hobbyists, 95% of people in the art of magic are amateur enthusiasts, right? And you know who my best students were? It was like all these guys who get the Penguin, the Vanishing Ink, the Murphys emails every day, and they buy this stuff.
Yeah.
Then they get it in front of them, and they look at the pile of stuff that they bought, and they don't know what to do with it, right?
It just goes in that pile.
It goes in that pile, and they maybe try it on their family and friends.
Yeah.
So this is where I come in. I go, let's take this thing. Let's pull out the presentation. Let's find something within you that makes this, what's the emotional hook? What we can find, let's find 3 things we put together in a little routine, and I would help these guys rebuild things that made sense for them. It was original ideas, something that only they could do and tell their life story and so forth. Anyway, I worked with, and I started doing this, and I got really inspired. And I said, this guy needs to meet this guy, because I had over 200 students at one point. And I go, and this guy needs to meet that guy. So I made a community. Somebody goes, you need a community. I go, what's that? Like a Facebook page.
Yeah.
Private Facebook group or something like that. So I found this software, and I started, and now it's grown. I call it Sleight School. And anybody's interested in magic is welcome. And it's kind of like, it's a private community, it's the entry fee is $12 a month. It's really nothing when you compare it to how much people spend on magic. It's like
and they meet once a week?
2 decks of cards or something. Well, we meet anytime you want, because it's 24/7, like a Facebook page. You make posts.
Oh, I see, like a forum.
It's a forum. That's what it is. Thank you. It's a forum, but also within that forum, we have live events. So every weekday, Mondays, we have something called Lounge Lizards at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, where we just hang out on Zoom and shuffle cards and talk and just talk, like being at a magic convention.
Yeah.
And then Tuesdays is the big meeting, and this is an hour long. It's recorded. This is the only one that's recorded. On Tuesday, it has a topic, and we pick topics anywhere from Cards Across to scripting, and we just pick a topic, which are conversation starters. And people bring their ideas, and we discuss the topic or this routine or this trick or this thing for an hour. We record it. It's all AI, has the transcript of the summaries and all that, so it's all searchable on the community.
That's pretty darn
and
cool.
We're up to 145 of our Tuesday. We call it Tuesday Study Session. We've just did our 145th consecutive one. Wow. We're very regular.
That's pretty. It's
and
a
then we
commitment.
do Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at staggered times at 1, 5, and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So the guys around the globe can join in, because we have everybody around the world's joining in. We have people from Italy and UK and Singapore and Malaysia and Australia and everywhere, Japan, China. And those are called Shut Up and Shuffle sessions.
Okay.
It's kind of like Lounge Lizard. We just meet and we shuffle cards until somebody thinks of something to show and just jaw. And those are not recorded. But that's just a scheduled time to get together with like-minded people and talk about your passion.
How many of those are you involved with because of your
Most
schedule?
of them.
Because
now,
you're,
when I'm touring,
you're traveling. Yeah.
I don't. And people volunteer. I'll host this session, and I'll host that session, and I'll host this session this week if Dave can't do it. But when I'm available, I do it, And even with a laptop now, I can do it from my hotel room in Sydney or, wherever I am, London or something.
And so those last generally about an hour-ish?
About an hour-ish, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're really fun, and there's so much knowledge that's passed through. And, of course, I invite all my friends to come, and, like, Carney will be there one day and talk to us about Vernon, and Weber chimes in all the time and correcting us on our credits and giving ideas that we never thought about. Caveney comes to a lot of meetings and tells stories, and, Jason England will talk about, so we have a lot of these kind of guys dropping in. But for the most part, it's just a really super friendly, the whole goal was to make it approachable, and nobody feels intimidated. It's a very welcoming and supportive group.
Community. When you're talking about this being called a school, Sleight School, I often think, obviously, the school having a curriculum. In other words, that you're going to be studying this or that.
We do have I started making a boot camp. So I have a card basics boot camp. And, you can go on YouTube and learn a million different passes and top changes and bottom deals and all this stuff. But I was like, I go back to the core techniques that I got, been using for my career for the past 40 years. And that's what I was teaching. I go, there's a million bottom deals, but here's the one that's in my tool chest. And let me show you a few tips that I've learned over the years. And here's the double lift. And because when I found out what I was teaching a lot of guys, and they go, then I do an Elmsley count, and then they do a horrible Elmsley count. And it's like, nobody's ever told you that was bad, have they?
Oh, interesting. So
you've never had a coach.
Yeah.
You've never had somebody look at that critically, because the other guys at the Magic Club are just waiting their turn to show you something, so they don't take the time. They're not invested in you. But when you pay somebody for a lesson, that's my job, is to go, nope, we're going to start over on that.
Right.
You can't even hold a break. Let's work on holding a break, which is a technique that needs to be rehearsed. I can see the line across the front of the deck from across the room. You're not doing it right, And they go, yeah, I just hold a break and I do a double lift and I do an Elmsley count. It's like,
so back
none
up,
of those.
Back.
We're going to go, wait, stop. Let's start from the beginning and start over and take pride in our, in polishing up these sleights. And it's fun. Practicing magic is an activity in and of itself. Practicing magic, not performing, just practicing and rehearsing is a joyful exercise. I do it all day long. I love it. I love working and refining, and that's what I try to instill,
I have a friend, Gene Protus, who is in the group, and he said he's hosted a time or two.
Yeah.
And he was saying that he had belonged to a few other groups, and he said that he's paid for, and he said, I've let that lapse. He said, I've decided that this is the one and only group that I want to be associated with and work with because I get a lot out of this, more than I do the others.
Well, I think this wasn't set up as a commercial enterprise. It's kind of a hobby. It's not a big money making thing.
Sure.
It kind of pays for itself, basically. That's what the fees are for. I use a lot of different technologies to make this thing go and pay a lot of fees. But it's hopefully my passion for the art of magic, and I remember all the conventions I used to go to, the TAOM and the Magi Fest and all the conventions I went to as a kid, and all the time that the older magicians had for me. I was telling you, Carol Fox and people like that would take me aside and show me things, and the kindness, and they brought me up. And that's the spirit I want this to be, this community. I want it to be the best magic convention hang that you ever had.
That people feel welcome to.
Welcoming and kind. And if there's criticism, it's all done with kindness and it's done properly.
Not condescending.
It's not, there's no politics and there's no bad mouthing, and I won't stand for any of that. You
think this is the future of clubs?
I don't know.
Because I just had a conversation with Dave Arch this morning about magic clubs in general. What is the future of clubs? Do you think that they'll continue to exist? And if so, what kind of iteration? But most people today, younger people in particular, have social communities like this. Yeah. And I'm wondering if this kind of thing will take the place of physical clubs.
Well, it kind of has, as the physical clubs have dwindled. But you never know. We were lamenting the death of magic books in the 80s, and there's no more books being published than ever.
Well, but also brick and mortar magic shops. That's something we've been talking about, and that has been dying out.
It has been dying out. That's true, yeah. And a lot of the clubs have been too, but they're atrophying, and the conventions. And
even the major organizations are looking at a way of trying to bolster up their membership, whether it's IBM or SIM.
Yep.
I was just talking with Mike Woodward with the IBM just last evening about that. We said, we're still over 7,000, but they're down from where they've been for a long time.
But online communities are a valid thing, and I know there's several out there. And
Aaron Fisher has a...
Fisher and Ben Earl and Steve Valentine and Doug Kahn, I think, does one. And,
right.
Yeah, and they're all great guys, and they all serve different, kind of aspects of it. So I think it's great. In fact, my idea was, I talked to Aaron, I talked to Ben Earl, I talked to Steve Valentine. My idea was, in the old days when the Kung Fu schools would have tournaments, and they would trash talk each other. So I was like, we should have a tournament, an online tournament of these communities. We send out videos trash talking each other's schools, and then we have brackets, and it's all for charity. People come watch the different competitions, and the money goes to benevolent funds, to Castle and Magic Circle, whatever. But it would raise everybody's the visibility of these communities in the magic consciousness. I was like, these things are out there. How cool
would that be?
A lot of people, but it would be really fun. And then you just put videos forward, like different people involved.
And people get a vote on that.
Yeah, and then everybody votes.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty fair.
It would be fun.
Too. There was another thing, too, that Gene had told me about and wanted me to bring up to you if I had a chance to chat with you, and that was about how that, what you just addressed there a moment ago there, David, as far as that you're working on some variations and ideas that everybody talks about. And there was one about Mary's favorite trick, or
Aunt Mary's Terrible Secret.
Terrible Secret, that's what it was, which is a marketable effect. But then you say, well, I've got another idea. And so you put that out, to the group.
Yeah, I mean, you asked if I was working on another book or lecture notes or something like that. I pour all of my creative energy into Sleight School. So when I have an idea or I want to share something, rather than putting it out there to sell on the marketplace, I invested in Sleight School. So I'll make a video of going, here's a completely self-working version of Aunt Mary's Terrible Secret, which used to use a steel and a faro shuffle, but here's, and whenever I have things I want to share, I do it within Sleight School. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of content there. There's a lot of just plain old content.
Wow.
And there's a lot of great discussions and just a ton of information. It's becoming a huge knowledge base is what it is.
Now, you were talking about the other ones, of course, like with Doug Kahn and Steve Valentine, et cetera. Just like with my podcast, that there are other magic podcasts out there.
Right.
And each of us have our own niche, and we have a lot of listeners will listen to various ones because there may be a marketing or business or whatever. Mine's just about what we're doing now, just a conversation. It's just a chat that during the context of this, not only will be entertaining, but also educational. People will take away something or get to know somebody that they didn't have as a friend before that now know somebody else more in the magic community. How does yours differ from what the other...
I don't know, because I purposely don't know what the others are doing.
Oh, okay.
And I have no idea what they do or how they do it, and I don't care. And I purposely stay away from exploring that because I just want to do what we're doing and build from that rather than trying to change something because of what somebody else is doing.
I see.
I want to make the best little community I can and facilitate the best conversations and instill the passion of magic, and just keep that alive. And if I worry about what other people are doing, it might affect, what I'm doing, strategic decisions and so forth. I don't want to do that. I'm not competing with anybody.
No, you're not.
Just myself to make it better.
Nor do I feel like that this podcast is competing with anything else either. I do listen to the other podcasts, and I feel like, okay, well, they've got their niche, and
I'm a huge fan of Ben Earl. He's one of the smartest guys out there in magic and a great thinker when it comes to sleight of hand. And he's got a group called The Family. And I want to join it, but I don't want to because I don't want to steal any ideas, by osmosis. So, but he's one I would recommend people go check out, if they want to check. But Ben Earl is just fantastic. It's called The Family. And we were making a joke. He had me come on one of his live events, and he was dissing Sleight School. And I go, well, you can leave school at the end of the day, but the family, it's like a cult. You can't leave a family. Beware,
You join the family.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. You're never getting out.
You're never getting out.
Yeah,
no.
It was Scientology. I mean, you're
exactly. That's
the
right.
group then as well. Well, it kind of reminds me a little bit, I guess, like when Gregory Wilson had said that he's not a thief. I don't take other people's stuff. There may have been something that someone showed me, and I might bury that in my mind, and 6 years later, something comes up that was in my subconscious, but I don't remember that particular conversation, that we had. But that's his argument. So I can see how that if you were listening, drawing a parallel here, if you were watching someone else's or whatever, you might subconsciously put something later in, say, well, what if we go in this direction? Or I maybe can add this as another evening.
Yeah, trying to chase after them or something like that.
Yeah, but doing it subconsciously.
Right, exactly.
Theoretically, according to what Gregory thinks.
It happens in magic, and it happens when you're performing. I know I've done other people's lines by accident. In fact, once I was on a TV show, and I said, I dropped some cards, and I went, I'm not as good as the other guys, and it got a big laugh. I got off the stage. It was an NBC special. I think it was one of those World's Greatest Magic.
Yeah.
I went to my phone, and I called Bob Sheets, and I went, I just stole one of your lines and put it on national TV. It just blurted right out. I didn't mean to.
You called to apologize immediately.
Yeah. And he laughed. He goes, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Everybody steals from me, So I go, I didn't do it intentionally. It just popped out. But that was Bob's line. I'm not as good as the other guys. It was just,
Well, sometimes we do this inadvertently, obviously, in which that there are simultaneous creators in the world.
Course.
I mean, like 100 monkeys, kind of a concept.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Do you have problems, or as far as when people might show something that is your idea, do you kind of say, well, you
No,
pursue them?
I have a healthy attitude towards that.
You were a creator and had a lot of stuff,
Well, I don't consider myself a creator. It's just out of necessity, necessity. I just needed this to happen, so I, did this. And my attitude now is that if I, quote, unquote, create something now, in my mind, I'm sure I'm not the first to think of this. So I don't consider myself a creator. It's like maybe a recreator or, discoverer. Yeah. I discovered something that somebody else discovered, possibly. In magic, it's very easy to do. And I've just, my recommendation to young magicians is when they go, there's something I came up with. It's like, okay, but understand that you're probably not the first to come up with that. So be careful about attaching your name to it and getting your pride. I had a pride when I was young,
Sure.
Like the striking vanish and all this stuff. But it was based on Ken Krenzel's kangaroo coin It was based on somebody else's action, So there's nothing really original. We're all playing in the same sandbox. You're going to get the same sand in your shoes,
But you address a point there, which a lot of young people think that it is a new creation for them because if they don't have a semblance or an understanding of the history of magic and where we've come from.
You should just assume that it's not is the safe bet.
That's a great quote right there.
Assume it's not yours, and that's the safe bet. And that's what I tell kids. I go, instead of saying this is something I came up with, it's better to say, I'm probably not the first to come up with this, but here's what I'm doing. Here's what I thought of.
Well, some years ago in Houston, there was a young man.
It's a more humble way to approach it, in a more,
Yeah, it would be. And then because somebody will say, no, I think that's an original idea. But
yeah, exactly.
But it is a
I've
humble
never
way
seen it before,
Yeah, and you can ask around, and eventually you might find out. Yeah, talk to the guys.
Over time, we decide, okay, it was a brand new thing. It was
an original idea. I was in Houston, and there was a young man who'd called me who lived north of town, and it was not easy for him to get his parents to drive them downtown for the meeting or whatever. He said, I'm thinking about becoming associated or affiliated with one of the organizations like the IBM or SM, or at least just forming our own club up here. I wonder if you could perhaps help us get a group started, because there are a bunch of younger people up here that we would like to get together, which is like in Kingwood, which was, ways away north of Houston. And I said, yeah, and I talked to a couple of the guys. We were going to do something, and I talked to him about a week later, and he said, well, I started talking with the same young man, so I talked with some other people, and they said, we've decided that we don't want to have a formal group where we're going to meet on a regular basis for the one main reason that we don't want a bunch of old guys saying, that's not a new idea, that is so-and-so's and such, and telling us that those are not our ideas.
How interesting.
And that was very enlightening to me. It's
was.
But you mean you don't want to hear the truth? You don't want to learn from the masters and just assume that this is a new thing. I'm going to call it a two lift. It's a double lift, man. It's been around for, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but the fact that they just felt like we don't want old guys telling us. Yeah. Very strange. Very strange.
Yeah.
And so with your group, it sounds like it's been going for a couple of years, and you're having fun. The fact that you're able, when you're out of town, and that you do have some time that you can go on the computer from wherever.
Well, I'm there a lot.
So,
I'm there a lot. But it's about the posts, and it's also about the live get-togethers. And if any of your listeners want to check it out, I'll put a coupon code up. It's since we're at the Magi Fest, if it's when they sign up, go to www.sleight.school, not slightschool.com. It's sleight.school.
There was already a Sleight School?
Huh?
Yes, there already was.
There already was a slightschool.com. I tried to buy it, but I can't figure out who owned it. They're not selling.
Okay.
So anyway, www.sleight.school, and then use the coupon code FEST, capital F, capital E, capital S, capital T, and that'll give you your first month free. It's only $12 a month, but come check it out. And if you like what you see, hang out with us.
Is there an obligation? In other words, that you sign up for the year, or you can stop any time?
No, you can stop at any time. You can stop before the month is out, and you don't pay anything.
Are there videos or PDFs and things you can download? Or
There are videos. You don't download them. You watch them. You stream them from there.
I was going to say, because some people can come in and say, I'm going to get it for a month, and I'm going to get all this stuff.
We had, and then we have some seminars on there too. Chris Power, a great sleight of hand man from England, gave a very rare seminar, and that's an extra purchase, but it lives there on Sleight School. Also, Michael Weber gave a great seminar. That's gone. That's not available anymore. It was a limited time only, but he gave one. We also have one that's still available. Gabi Pereras, the great Spanish magician who passed away recently. He was like the next Tamariz. He was a real thinker and a huge influence for the Spanish School of Magic. His students and friends did a seminar. Pepe Venezuela, I'm blanking on everybody's names. But anyway, we had these wonderful Spanish magicians who gave a seminar about Gabby's magic. And that's at Sleight School. And you can only see it there. Yeah.
And does this really only cover cards and sleights? I mean, it's not like stand-up or comedy?
No. We talk about all kinds of topics, know. But it is heavy. I'll be honest, heavy on close-up magic, and but it's not necessarily all we talk about. There's all kinds of things.
So there's not like an evening in which you're going to say,
like we have different rooms, we have different categories, different channels. One is, for example, a show and tell. Put your favorite YouTube videos up. Like I love watching Ricky Jay from 1976, Doug Henning's first special.
Yeah. Right.
And I put that up. I go, here's the best magic you'll ever see on TV.
When he's doing some card throwing and everything.
Yeah. That was the original Ricky J. And then we have other competitions, like creative competitions that have prizes, and swag and so forth. We have swap meet where people can trade and sell. We have interviews where I've interviewed lots of people. Joaquin Matus, a wonderful Spanish magician, he has his own area, and it's called Joaquin's Table, where he shares a lot of his professional routines and secrets. It's amazing. And another one, a young man from Brazil called Antonio Bourgeois, called Antonio's Lab. He has a whole lot of crazy ideas about magic, and he shares in a lot of posts and so forth. And there's different rooms. Wonders, I call it Williamson's Wonders. It's it's like a blog where I share a lot of material, stories, interviews. And we have a brain trust room where people ask any question, and the brain trust, the hive mind, comes in and helps them answer it. Sure. One guy recently is like, where can I get these special cards printed, but I need this and this and this particular thing. And, he had 12 answers. Wow. And a lot of help. We have a library where people talk books, book discussions, screening room, like I said, show and tell. Trick of the week, something I started recently where we take an old trick, like a Nick Trost trick or something from a Paul Bearer's review, and it's usually fairly self-working, something people could do right away, but then we pile in on comments and try to improve the trick with presentation and ideas and so forth. But they're forgotten tricks that we're shining a light on again. And it's really fun. Because, most people in magic, and this old saw, is the professionals do the same 5 tricks for thousands of people.
And an amateur
does thousands of tricks
for the
same 5 people.
Right.
And so this trick of the week, I'm getting a lot of great feedback. It's like, I did this for my family, I did it for my friends. I can't wait to see what the next trick of the week is.
Right.
So they're looking for new things all the time. And so that's one of the new things at Sleight School. So I'm always trying to come up with new ideas and new things. We have polls, fun polls, and question of the week that people, and it starts incredible discussions. These are conversation starters. So, yeah.
Sounds like quite a rich community and
it's
good-sized group. And probably
very vibrant.
Yeah. So in any one of those nights, whenever that you would log in, whether it be like 20, 30 people, or there'd be 250, or
it's closer to the first number.
Okay. So it's not like overpacked.
Depending on what the topic is and who's available and time of day. Yeah.
Okay.
I gave every kid at Tannen's camp free access for a year. So now there's a lot of young people in there.
That's great.
And a lot of great energy, and then the old guys talking to the young guys. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Wow. It's called Sleight School, and that's sleight.school.com.
Yeah. And use the coupon code FEST, all caps, to get a first month free, get a taste of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
offering that to the listeners then as well. Well, as we start to wrap up over here, I want to thank you for your time and words and everything. It's always
pleasure.
Good to get a chat with you.
Thanks for not asking me about exposing magic. I don't want to step into that oil slick.
Okay. Let's just stay Switzerland.
Yeah, exactly.
And so my podcast is called the Magic Word Podcast. So what would be your phrase? What's your philosophy of life? What's important to you? Not talking about like what's a magic word like abracadabra. I mean, like, what makes David Williamson tick when you wake up in the morning and you look forward to accomplishing?
I don't know. The older you get, the more philosophical you get.
Yeah, it is. That's why we're getting older.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't have a philosophy of life. I live by the golden rule. That's for sure. And in magic, my feeling is be kind to the people coming up behind you. Be the person you wish you would have had in your life when you were young. To the people coming up, and that's how magic survives, not through books or downloads or products or DVDs. It survives by people sharing their passion with the next generation and the next people coming up behind.
To give a hand down.
Reach down and pull them up And that's how magic, and be generous with your time for younger people or people who are starting out. And it's really, it opens up a whole new world, you know.
When I see you at magic conventions, I'm always impressed about how you are surrounded by young people. It's not just us who have known you for a long time, but I feel like I got to get out of the way because these young kids are asking you questions and wanting to learn.
Well, I love sitting at the table with the young guys because it just takes me back to when I was 12 and used to come to the Magi Fest and sat at the table with Goshman and, you know, and all the greats. And I just loved it so much, you know. So I love watching these kids because we're probably sitting with, you know, these 9 and 12-year-olds probably sitting with the next David Blaine or
future
Copperfield or, the next Vernon, you know. And these kids are so great. They're so amazing. They're so knowledgeable.
Like Blaze Sarah. That guy is amazing.
But even the 9 and 12-year-olds are amazing. Yeah, Blaze is unbelievable. Yeah,
the chops these kids have, you know, I'm so jealous. But I'm so glad that we have a community that you have created like that. So thank you very much, David, for what you have done over the years. I mean, from the beginning to the end.
Well, I remember meeting you at the old TAOMs when they were run by Ed Campagna.
Sure.
Remember those? Oh,
absolutely.
The good old days.
Back in the 80s, yeah.
Yeah. My first convention was in late 70s. My dad dropped me off in Dallas, I think, at a TAOM. And I walked up, and there's Roger Klaus and some of the Texas Mafia standing around. Yeah. And I approached him. I couldn't believe I knew who he was, you know. And I had a brand new deck of aristocrats. And I go, Mr. Klaus, it's just a pleasure to meet you. He goes, oh, hello there, son. And he was so kind. And he goes, is that a deck of aristocrats? I go, yeah, they're brand new. I just bought them. Oh, those are nice. You want to see a trick? And I go, oh, I'd be honored. I was like,
I know what he's going to do.
Yeah, here, pick a card. And I put it back in the deck, and he goes, it's called the Rising Cards. And he stuck it in a glass full of beer. And he goes, oh, crap. Ruined my beer. Go get me another beer, kid. And they all laughed while I walked away. I was like, I didn't know the laugh or cry or what was going on. But I survived that. And I understood that was all done with love. You know, it's like that initiation to the... And that's how I treat these kids now.
So Roger Klaus is the one who inspired you to be David Williamson.
Yeah, exactly.
With
to be
kids.
Mean to children, yeah.
Be mean to kids.
No. But no, I loved all those guys. I have a lot of stories about those old conventions, all the pranks they would play and the gags. And
well, you know, speaking of which, and then I'm going to close with this, and that was, I mentioned before we started recording this, the great podcast that my friend John Gaspard does, in which it is talks about Eli Marks, and you can hear each episode that Jim Cunningham will read a chapter from one of the books.
Terrific books.
Yeah, they are. I'm a consultant on that. I don't know if you've read.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, if you open up on the inside, and you know, he always in the forward will thank certain people. I'm one of the people because I've been the magician consultant because he's not a magician, so he sends it to me before he goes to the final episode, you know, final cut, and he says, "Do magicians actually talk like this or act like this when they're at a convention or when you're together or performing?" And so, so I get to give the final edit, and
that's cool.
So I got a really nice compliment, or he did, from Teller saying, "I love your books because they sound like what a magician would do." And he said this is directly related to what you have added in your input, you know, for the book. So I'm very thankful. So I love John, and he's been a friend of the Magic Word and a patron for a long number of years. But the fact that he had talked with you, I'm really, it's a long story to get to complimenting you about, I thought, the stories you were talking about on there, and I recommend people go back and listen to all of his podcasts, but in particular the one that you had talked about where at a magic convention where you were hiding in a room and you were each person was lined up and they were going to be coming in and they would say, okay, David's gone. They could look anywhere.
The Winston Freer bathroom vanish.
Vanish, yes. And people would come in one at a time and you were not there. They come out and say, oh my gosh, where did he go?
40 people in line, and Weber or somebody would let him in one at a time, and they'd examine the whole hotel bathroom, and I'd be gone. Yeah. And they come out going, he's gone.
And they talk about that for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyhow, I recommend people go back and hear the story. Absolutely hilarious, as you always are with, and so erudite. I appreciate our friendship. And again, thanks again for being on the Magic Word.
It's always a pleasure.
So with the Magic Word Podcast, that was David Williamson. This is Scotty out. Thank you, David. What a delightful conversation. I always enjoy getting a chance to sit down and chat with you, and I'm glad we've got to see each other a number of times here this year then as well, and kind of getting to hang out with each other. For the rest of you, if you see David, as I mentioned earlier, be sure to tell him that you heard him here on the Magic Word Podcast, and also that you will consider joining his Sleight School. That's sleight.school, and put in the promo code FEST. That's all capital letters, F-E-S-T, for Magi Fest. So just put in FEST, and you'll get your first month free. great deal. Thank you, David, for extending that offer from the Magi Fest all the way over to the listeners of the Magic Word podcast. And speaking of listeners, I'd like to encourage all of you to go out and to leave a 5-star comment wherever that you listen to your podcast. I'm sure whether it's iTunes or Spotify or whatever, there's a way in which you can go out, and that will help us grow. Also, if you're not a subscriber to the pod letter, I recommend if you go to the magicwordpodcast.com, there you get additional content. I spend a lot of time putting additional content on there with photos and some videos, also a little bit of a blog that I write about the person that I speak to each week. Anyhow, go and check that out and consider joining up, because you also get to be the first one who get to hear about contests whenever that we're offering something from some of our fantastic guests that we have here. I also want to encourage you to watch the video blog called The Magic Whisper that is published each Tuesday on YouTube. It's a short, about a 5 to 10 minute video that tells you just some updates on topical things that are happening around the magic world, and also about conventions I've just attended or whatever. There's been some pretty good ones over the past few weeks since I've been doing this, so go and check that out. You can just find it by just doing a search for Scott Wells, or type in Texas Magician and you can find me. Again, it's called The Magic Whisper. Love to have you watch that and like and comment. I also recommend if you will share this with other people, that will certainly help this podcast to grow. And subscribe and like and all the rest of the stuff you're supposed to do. You know what you're supposed to do. Thank you guys very much for your help. So, till next week, stay well, get booked, and remember to be the person you wish you would have had helping you when you were young. This is Scotty out.